free consulting segment of the webinar, Open Access to the Modeling Agency's Advanced Analytic Gurus, Senior Consultants Tony Rathburn and Scott Terry. So each question you submit will receive multiple perspectives. We do have, like I say, great questions coming in now. We have room for just a few more. So just enter your questions into that text field of the webinar panel, and I'll be pleased to read them aloud for myself, Scott, or Tony to respond. So let's start with, well, here's a quick one I can address from Morris. Actually, there's two of them here I'll group together. The one I'll knock out very quickly. What recommended resources do you have to develop skills in data mining? Well, I know, Morris, you asked that question a little earlier before I underscored one of the best resources to really ramp up in a very short period of time. Of course, nobody's going to be an expert after even 5 or 7 solid days of concentrated training, but it is the fastest way to certainly tackle that spike in the learning curve and really establish a solid platform and understanding for analytics and the full process. So I would have to say, subjectively, that the Modeling Agency's courseware is probably your #1 resource if you can get there. And I understand fewer have travel budgets these days, but we do put them around the country. And if you can get to one of those, that is your #1 resource, I would say, for rapidly developing deep skills in predictive analytics and data mining, and not just the tactical skills, but the ones that are going to make you stand out in the analytic practice, the strategic orientation to the practice. So that would be the #1. If you absolutely can't get there, then we will be following up with an email that has links to a number of other resources, social media groups and texts and articles and the like that will be helpful as well. That'll be coming to you automatically after this event. The second part of Morris's question, what distinct issues have you come across when involved with urban analytics? Let me ask you this, Morris. Can you tell us more about urban analytics? And let me throw this out to Tony and Scott in case they understand exactly what that means. But if not, we'll stand by for you to describe a little bit more about what you mean by urban analytics. Scott, do you understand urban analytics? Scott, you may be still muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep, you are live. Yep.
That sounds like a commercial, don't it? Well, I don't know that I understand it in the context that he's presenting it. We've done quite a bit of work in terms of geographic analytics and geodemographics, so I'm curious as to if that's what he's referring to.
Yeah, you know what, and I'll swing over to Tony here very quickly in case, Tony, you know what that entails, urban analytics. But if
no, I'm clueless too. So.
Okay, yeah, Morris, we'll stand by for you to describe what that is, and if you can let us know the application a little more specifically, we can respond to it a little more specifically. Until then, here's a cool question from Sean. What tools best support variable selection for modeling? And I know this goes to the core of a good bit of what Scott was presenting in his segment. I'm going to guess that one of the best tools that supports variable selection for modeling, this question asked by Sean, the best tool would be Sean, right? And Scott, I'm throwing that out to you, thinking that thinking that Scott, you know.
Okay, I got you. Well, absolutely. You know, you're kind of hitting on a very important thing about what we do. Going back to something Tony talked about in terms of algorithms having no intelligence and not understanding our business objectives. Everything that we use in our profession are tools. The #1 qualification for becoming a good analyst or a good modeler, a good miner, a good data scientist, good whatever it's called today, is creative problem solving. So there are a variety of tools and techniques that one can use for variable reduction and variable selection. Some of the algorithms themselves do, for example, stepwise selection of inputs. You have other algorithms that can help you select, such as decision trees, and show you interactions between variables. You have algorithms that can reduce variables to a component or a factor. So there are a lot of different techniques that you can use in addition just to plain old exploratory analytics, and it's up to the skill level of the analyst to be able to employ those tools. In other words, to put it simply, there's no magic button that you can push that will give you the answer.
Darn it. I was hoping to hear that sometime today. Tony, and I love your Homer Simpson representation of software, that, you know, it really doesn't have intelligence. You have to guide it the right way, and it is an iterative cycle, and you know, some of the discoveries you make are going to guide you in how you do your data prep on the next cycle before you even get into the analytics. I love how you set the stage for that. And Tony, I know you have a lot to say on the issue, and you know, maybe another way to approach this, and by all means come into this as you'd like, but I know you rely heavily on Excel, so I think a lot of people will have a question: how much data prep can be done in Excel, and what are the advantages of working with some software that has more specific features for preparing data specifically for predictive modeling?
Let me come back to the Excel component on that, because I was thinking a little differently on answering the question.
Yeah, you bet.
The point that I really would like to have everyone in attendance understand is that variable selection, as Scott mentioned, is at least partially an art form, especially in today's environment of big data and what I refer to as fat data, where we've got, in many cases, up tens of thousands of fields associated with a record. How do we work through all of those potential condition attributes and make a determination of which ones may or may not be of use to us in that kind of a complex environment? I think just a very, very basic way of screening out that candidate pool of potential condition attributes is to take a look at the correlation between that variable, that field, and the outcome attribute you've set up. If there's no correlation, there's no information content available to us. As Scott mentioned, there's some more advanced techniques, things like factor analysis and principal components analysis, that can find related sets of fields that may contribute. But please understand that in doing that kind of an analysis, what we're doing is developing a composite that is no formula that says these kinds of...
Uh-oh. Just so you know, your line is still live, everybody, and we lost Tony's audio. If you can hear me, Tony, I don't know if there's something you can change in your settings on your side. And I know Tony dials in from voice over IP, so there could have been a disruption in Tony's data feed. But we did lose your audio, Tony, and that was, I think we got a lot out of the answer to what we had heard. Not hearing you come back in as of yet. I think we'll move to the next question. And actually, Morris did get back with a definition of the urban analytics. And that is, and actually the questions are kind of flooding in at this point, so we're going to have to start to be selective and maybe a little more brief on the responses, as we're down to the last 5 minutes. And I promised Ben that we would reserve the last few minutes for a phenomenal wrap-up question that he presented. So Morris described the urban analytics as data from economic activity, human behavior from surveys, mobility patterns, resource consumptions toward effective urban planning and providing civic services. And you're right, Morris. Morris added, I'm expecting that it really comes down to data availability, and it does. And it's really understanding the problem that you want to solve, the resources that are going to be applied to it. And that comes into really defining the project and defining the data that you want to test. And then in the end, those attributes that may apply. The great thing about machine learning is they will, through iteration, determine which of those attributes have predictive value. So I don't want to hog the question. Let me stop there and say that, now that we have Morris's definition, I don't know that it really has to be that specific about the application as much as what about, what's the issue where you have so many different kinds of variables available? How do you decide what to include and how to prepare it in general, Scott?
Well, how to prepare is a whole lot different when it comes to what I understand what he's describing as urban analytics, because you have a geospatial component to it. So usually with geospatial, you have additional types of data in that it is geographically located. You have geocodes, longitudes, latitudes. You have aggregate data from governments, that's census, and quite often distances are important as well as drive time. So, I wish I could answer this question adequately in the time allotted, but the place where you want to study has to do with geospatial analytics.
No, good point. And I hope to some extent, Nassim, your question is great as well. It almost bridges into a big data type of issue when you have different types of data. Some of it's structured, some of it's not, different sources. Scott, just to rope both of these together, is there any advice you'd have in the advantages of developing a data analytics sandbox? I know I'm asking. I'm asking these questions that have hour-long answers.
I don't know. I don't know in this case that you necessarily need a data analytics sandbox. Really, you're talking about more global and environmental things that you have to consider first of all. Sure, you can do a sandbox for particular applications, but you really need to think more about in terms of what your total database environment's going to be like. Because if you're talking about urban planning, that's usually a government type of application, and so geography is king there, and so you need to have geospatial or GIS, geographic information systems considerations that are included that are a little bit different from what we've been talking about today.
Good point. Yeah, great point. And let me check if Tony, do we have your audio back?
Yeah, we do. I dropped my connection somewhere in the middle of my response, and my apologies. And I just realized after I finished and wrapped it up and called back in. So I caught the tail end of Scott's response, and we can move on from here.
Okay, yeah, very good, because we're almost to the bottom of the half hour here, and there's a great wrap-up question that was so good that I sent it to the two of you in advance to ponder your response a little bit. I know I get greedy with some of these responses, and being the moderator, I can sometimes jump in first. So I'm going to refrain. I'll just cap off after the two of you go. But the great question, the great wrap-up question from Ben is, what are your thoughts on the future of data analytics? What is your vision for the next 5 to 10 years within the analytics field? Tony, I know you and I have seen things roll out for more than a couple of decades with data analytics, and we had been ahead of the curve when it comes to practical application for analytics. We had seen it come through the research phases and the innovators. And then we'd start to hear some case studies where there were some, positive benefits, but it was really rare, and that's why I think they made such a big sound. It was because it showed that it could be done, but there were very few that were actually getting there. So the market seems to be finally catching up. We had what's called the big data distraction, is what I term it to be, and I think big data has merit, but its hype is leveling off and becoming more appropriate to analytics. But let me go ahead and pause there. And what is your view then? What's your vision with what analytics will look like 5 to 10 years from now?
Okay. And I've tempered my thoughts around big data. I think in retrospect, the big thing that big data has really provided for us is a restructuring of our data repositories in a way that more appropriately support analytics. And from that perspective, I think the efforts made there give us a solid platform. What I really hope to see is an understanding that we have three perspectives when it comes to analytics. We have a quantitative perspective, we have a data perspective, and we have a business perspective. And I think more and more people are really starting to realize that we've developed these massive data repositories of raw materials of information, libraries, if you will, of information. And we've purchased software and invested in human resources that are extremely talented from a quantitative perspective. And it's time to turn our attention back to doing business. That's why we acquired these resources. That's why we built these data repositories, is to enhance business performance. And we need to take what our work in predictive analytics and bring it back onto the desktops. This should be on every desktop of every business decision maker that has a copy of a spreadsheet, because the basics of this have to be in the foundation of a business problem. Our data work, our quantitative work is to support business decision making. That's on top of the pyramid. our quant work, our data work is in support of that. And this is where I'm seeing the organizations that are being effective are realizing that and really starting to turn their attention back and saying, okay, we've spent all this money. I've got to go beyond just telling these guys to show me something for the investment. And they're really taking the bull by the horns and saying, this is what we need to do. This is how we make better decisions. Show me how you can help me.
Great. That's a great vision, and I agree with that. And Scott, what's your vision for the future with analytics 5 to 10 years out?
Well, I think that's a very good question, and I'll treat it just like I do some types of models. I'll think of it from a supervised modeling perspective, look at the past and project it into the future.
Love it.
The first thing that I see is that our industry parallels Moore's Law. If you think about it, well, some of us are new to the industry, some of the people on the call, but I've been doing this for well over 30 years, and I have to tell you that I've never been in a situation where I haven't been working with big data. It's just that the limits or the bounds of big data have expanded. So as Moore's Law has come true, we've had more sources of data, and we've had more data available, and it's always stretching the boundaries of our technology. So Moore's Law is going to continue to feed, and we're going to see a lot more supply of data and a lot more demand for data analytics. In other words, to Tony's point, it's going to become more pervasive. Along with that, in terms of sources, the Internet of Things is going to continue to develop. More things are going to be hooked up to intelligence or sensor data or all types of data sources availability, in addition to the big data text mining kind of stuff that we're saying. So we'll have to be better at data integration and dealing with different types of data from different sources, and probably more in real time. More real-time applications will start to develop. And of course, associated with that is if I project from the past into the future, we'll continue to see new types of algorithmic applications to deal with particular types of problem sets evolve. And we'll just continue to be down the curve. So, I guess the encapsulating type of thing that I'd say is, if we think about big data today and we're all excited about it and we think of it new, wait another 5 years and you're going to look 5 years back into the past, and you're going to kind of laugh at where you thought big data was 5 years ago.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, and with analytics overall, I think there's one more spin, and with all of us bringing each a slightly different perspective, I would also challenge that organizations will be thinking far more strategically than they had in the past. There's going to be less of a compulsion to jump directly into software and data as there had been in the past, and most organizations still started that way. The modeling agency has been reinforcing for many years, and not because this is a coming trend, to focus on strategic implementation. That's the name of the overall course series that shows the balanced approach of strategy and tactics. Almost if you're going to try to win a race, you don't want to just do that with mechanics, and that's what I fear most organizations are doing by hiring more and more PhDs and what I consider to be the true definition of a data scientist, which in my view is not the analytic lead, but if you're going to have scientist in your title, that is a person who, in my view, runs for more tactics, follows scientific method and process more closely. They're not necessarily the person, in my view, that has the soft skills and the business acumen to be able to do a comprehensive assessment and a solid project definition. So those kinds of people, like Tony, like Scott, like others on the modeling agency's bench, are what we call the unicorns in the industry. They're not really for hire either, because there's too few of them. Many say that data scientists are the ones that are rare. They actually are not. Those who know machine learning methods very well, those who can actually perform data transformations and data preparation well, and go into choosing decision trees and neural nets and being able to dissect them and understand mechanically how they work. That actually is not all that rare. But when you overlay that, like I was saying at the beginning of this webinar, with the traits of a seasoned consultant who understands how to frame the problem, how to engage with those the different roles on the analytic team, from the analyst to the subject matter experts, and rolling up content in terms that stakeholders and leaders can understand and appreciate. That's where it becomes very rare. So in the future, what I see is a greater balance between tactics and strategy, a better approach to and more emphasis on assessment and project definition and cultural mindsets, and understanding that it does take a different caliber of, I would say, consultant, because these analytic leaders aren't necessarily going to be what most organizations can hire full-time in-house. I think they're going to be outsourced, and even if they could be hired in-house, it's not always a full-time position. There's many on the analytic team that can take implementation forward in-house with the direction and oversight of that analytic mentor and designer and trainer. So that's kind of my vision, is that organizations should certainly have an in-house analytic practice, that it can be guided and designed from the outside and coached and mentored from the outside, but that there are many other roles beyond the data scientist that have to come together, as Tony had described, for a thriving internal analytic team and practice. And when those components are balanced out, that's where analytics is then going to provide substantial and residual benefit for organizations that can be measured and communicated to leadership for, like I say, for ongoing benefit. So that's where I see it going. And having been here for a while, the analytics day is coming, just as Scott has said. It's been the slowest growing wave that we've seen coming over decades. Like Scott said, I highly doubt we're going to run out of not only data, but different types of data and volumes of data. So being able to understand what to include and how to process it for meaningful analytics is going to be the big challenges in the next 5 to 10 years. So that runs us about 10 minutes over our promised long time frame of 90 minutes. We did retain more than half of those who signed up at the beginning, and we're grateful for that, knowing that people had to get back to their duties of the day. But at 40 after the hour, we better draw this event to a close, and I'd certainly like to thank our attendees today for not only your sustained interest, but your very active participation in the polling, and certainly to Scott and Tony for your great segments, and of course your great contributions to the Q&A. Now we're going to follow up with that email that I promised shortly with some resources and suggestions that will hopefully be useful to you, and from there we'll hope you've offered permission for us to stay in touch through the Modeling Agency's newsletter, and that you'll consider us joining us at a public training event soon. So make sure to register early to secure one of the few remaining very early bird 25% discount spaces for the quickly approaching Washington, D.C. production coming up in just a few weeks, or if it's a better fit, keep the San Francisco Bay Area production in mind for December. And don't forget that your colleagues can join you anytime for up to 30% off. Now, if you don't have a training or travel budget but would like the guidance of a seasoned mentor, you might be interested in the Modeling Agency's Escort on Call program. Escort on Call is essentially a retainer account that provides remote open access to a TMA senior consultant, or one of those unicorns I described. Simply open up an Escort on Call account and you've instantly added a wealth of experience and capability to your existing bench without expanding payroll, administrating complicated contracts, or taking elevated risk on larger commitments. We'll get you the answers you want, guide you through it, show you how it's done, implement any data mining tasks you may wish to delegate, and then remain on call until the next time you need us. And meanwhile, when we're not actively working, you're not paying a dime. So a link to the Escort on Call description page will be among the resources included in the follow-up email. On behalf of myself, Scott, and Tony, thank you again for attending Data Mining Failure to Launch. Have a very pleasant afternoon and evening, and this brings the webinar broadcast to a close.